I never got around to playing Infamous 2 for whatever reason. I loved the first game, and I thought more people should have experienced such an awesome gem of a title. Here we are in 2022, I have finished Infamous Second Son, and the better part of a decade has passed since its release. Does it hold up? Let's get into it. How about those graphics? Those Sony first-party graphics just seem to do it every time, right? Well, yes and no with Infamous Second Son. Overall, I think this game aged extremely well. There's some super awesome texture work for the age of the game. A lot of powers are not only fun, but they're awesome to look at. This game has one glaring flaw that's right in front of your face. I don't know how more people didn't mention it at the time. Why the hell is it so dark?
What the hell?
Oh my god, what in the hell? Like, this game is dark. I had to make some adjustments during the editing of this review because you just can't see some things in this game sometimes. Now, it probably isn't helping a little bit that I'm on a C1 OLED, which is really nice playing this game, and I'm getting really inky blacks with some amazing colors. Don't get me wrong, all of the powers, especially the neon stuff, look amazing. 8-year-old game with these kind of particle effects? Yeah, seriously impressive stuff for the age of the game. The problem is, again, depending on where you're at on the map and the lighting, it's dark. My biggest problem with this, I think, is I found enemies really hard to spot. There are a couple of moments in the game that only last for like 10 or 20 minutes where the game has more of a blue and gray tone and it's raining. Those look amazing. Still a little bit on the darker side, but it's a lot better than the majority of the game. I even tried turning off the HDR features and I was still let down. Not only did the game look a lot worse, but I just couldn't play like that. I turned HDR back on and just accepted the fact that this is probably an artistic choice in this game and it was meant to be dark. Overall, I think, regardless of my complaints with the game being really dark at times, this is still a really awesome looking game, and you have to consider the age, and you're just like, wow, like, how did they pull this off at the time? You have to remember how weak the PS4 was, right? Even on release, the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, not impressive consoles, even in the slightest. The PS5 and the Xbox Series X, a much bigger jump. So at the time, there was no PS4 Pro, there wasn't an Xbox One X, and just the fact that they could pull this off on, exclusively on PlayStation 4 with no Pro or anything, it's really impressive stuff. I should also mention the performance because that's very important to me. This game has no trouble, especially on the PlayStation 5, reaching 60 FPS all of the time. There was no slowdown, regardless of what was happening, regardless of the amount of particle effects on screen. It was really well done. Infamous Second Son's gameplay completely overshadows everything else about this game, including my complaints about the graphics and how dark they can be at times. In some ways it plays similar to the other titles, but I think it's also very much its own thing. With Infamous Second Son, this time around you have a total of 4 powers to unlock, which is actually kind of interesting for me because a lot of the earlier footage I remember seeing for this game just had the smoke powers, so maybe they didn't want to reveal too much and just have you play the game and experience everything. But with this one, you have smoke, you have neon, you have video, if you can believe that, and concrete. Smoke is your very first power, and I'm like, okay, I wonder how they're going to do this. I wonder how this is going to work. But to my surprise, they actually did a really good job with it, and the smoke powers are really fun once you start leveling them up. It's kind of cool. There's some humor to it, actually. I don't know if people treat you any differently if you're not going for the Infamous playthrough, but some of the NPCs on the streets will shout things at Delson like, "Smoke isn't a real power." And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? They're right. But this works, and it looks cool, and that's all I care about. Again, especially when you start to unlock some of the more powerful abilities. Neon was very different right from the start. I wasn't even thinking about leveling it up because I'm just like, wow, these powers are really awesome right from the jump. I found myself using Neon a lot more as I progressed through the game. The fact that I can one-shot most of the enemies with Neon's headshot ability is extremely helpful. No doubt about it. Just using Neon a lot more than all of the other powers for that reason alone. Not the only reason, of course. First of all, it looks cool and pops with your HDR. Seeing that replenishing bar for all of your power is fun, and it's just awesome to see at the same time. When I first got Neon, I was like, nice, dude, no more drawing from smokestacks. But as it turns out, and this is a credit to the developers and the overall game design, I missed using smoke, and depending on your situation, both can come in handy and be very devastating. Speaking of devastating, when you get video, it felt a lot more powerful to me than smoke and neon did without leveling it, at least at first. Video is probably my least favorite power, but being able to go invisible with the click of a button is a really nice addition. I don't know why, man. I couldn't get into it. I didn't enjoy the video powers as much as everything else. I don't think it sucks or is poorly designed. It's probably just a comfort thing. I enjoyed smoke and neon so much that I started to feel like I don't really need anything else. Sometimes while playing, I'm not even kidding, I straight up forgot that I had video. Concrete, yeah, I liked it a lot, but it's unfortunate that you don't get that until the end of the story. I spent the least amount of time with it because once I was done with the story, I killed maybe 30-40 enemies and I felt like, I think I've had my fill. Overall fun factor and a few thoughts on the mechanics and enemy types. Look, Infamous Second Son is a ton of fun, but I really felt touching on the visuals again because at times they did affect my gameplay. I felt a little held back by how dark this game can be. I was probably killed 15 to 20 times during this playthrough because enemies were in cover in areas that were just too damn dark. The enemies themselves, at least for the most part, are your basic fodder and usually really easy to dispose of. Like so many other games, especially in this genre, enemy types start to repeat extremely often and you'll start to feel like you're more or less killing the same people over and over. There just isn't a lot of variation in that area of the game, and for the most part, I get it. There was probably a budget issue, a time issue. This was more or less a launch title for the PlayStation 4, so I get it. I think Sucker Punch is talented enough. If they'd have had a lot more time and probably a bigger budget to flesh this one out a little bit more, this game could have been absolutely incredible. But it's the APCs, the enemies that also have some powers, and the turrets that are the real problem in this game. Some of the more humanoid type enemies can drop a concrete shield right in front of themselves at will. They can also make some seriously high jumps while keeping you on your toes in some of the more insane heavy battles. At first I was a little annoyed with some of that stuff, but as I went on, I'm like, you know what? Now that I'm leveling some of my powers and I'm getting more powers, this is actually kind of challenging. APCs, yeah, man, take them out right away. If you haven't played this game, take them out as quickly as possible because they will gun you down with the quickness. And speaking of that, it doesn't really take much to put Delsin down in this game anyway. Could be frustrating for some, but wasn't a big deal for me. Now, after you eliminate a good handful of enemies, you're able to use your special attack depending on which power you're using at the time, and these fuck everything and everyone up.
Boy, have you guys got the drop on me?
Alright, so what's the plan?
When you use these special attacks, you're likely to kill civilians, do some property damage, and kill the intended enemies with these things. It's incredible, and they're really fun to watch. Like seriously, you do one of these special attacks for each power, and you're like, holy shit, that was amazing. How did they pull that off on the PlayStation 4? You just clear out that small section of the map, like a small tiny area on the map, and all that's left are some really cool particle effects. It's pretty amazing. Each of the powers also come with other abilities. You can fly, scale up walls, run faster, or raise Delsin right over enemy types in the middle of combat to give him yet another advantage. Delsin also has some melee attacks, and they can be lifesavers if your power bar is completely drained. Each one is different though, with Smoke having like a chain that slaps enemies around, and Neon having this sword-like weapon, for example. They're pretty cool. One of the other cool main factors of these Infamous games has always been, how are you gonna play? If you wanna play like an asshole, there's gonna be some consequences. You wanna be the hero? There are consequences for that too. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I also played the original game like a complete jerk the first go around too. Civilians on the ground crying for help, yeah, I kicked the shit out of them. Plain and simple, I'm not helping you. I've become absolutely obsessed with these powers and love being involved in all of the chaos. Kick rocks, as far as I'm concerned. Some other interesting things that'll happen, it's a nice touch when you're in a real heavy battle and you kill most of the enemies, the last enemy type will surrender because they're the last one, and they watch me absolutely obliterate all of their friends. There's no mercy. I'm not saving you, I'm taking you out, I'm killing you, you were shooting at me 2 seconds ago. Fuck that. No mercy for the opponent because the opponent will show you no mercy. I stand by that. Infamous games are cool because the story plays out a little bit differently based on the choices you've made right up until the very end. Just understand that based on those choices, the ending you were hoping for may or may not happen depending on how much of an asshole you were. The powers in the upgrade menu are leveled with these things called shards. These shards can be obtained through story missions and anything else on the side. I didn't really feel like I was playing a Ubisoft game here, which is a huge compliment in the industry that we have today, but Infamous Second Son doesn't contain a lot of side missions unless we're just talking about things that you can go and do in general. But all of that stuff is going to give you things that you need. You're going to want to upgrade. You're going to want to get those shards. That includes taking out DUP bases, shooting down many drones throughout the city, and spray painting walls. Yeah, Delson considers himself a bit of an artist and can do some pretty impressive things with spray paint. If I didn't feel I'd possibly be interested in trying to get the platinum for this game someday, I wouldn't have bothered with most of that stuff since a lot of it's optional anyway. But again, as far as some of the side stuff that you can do, very little of it felt like busy work to me.
Oh, okay, so maybe I, lied about the neon thing, but listen, I think I can save us both a lot of time here. I just need to leech a little power off you, that's it.
You want me to just give you my power?
I mean, not enough to sink bridges or anything, but enough to pull the concrete daggers out of my friends, yeah. And then after that, you will never see me again.
You know, sometimes it's just the way that things go, but we haven't been having a good one with the stories in these last couple of games I've reviewed. When it comes to Infamous Second Son, there also isn't much of a story to speak of. In Infamous Second Son, you are Delson Rowe, and you belong to a tribe of people within what seems to be a reservation. Delson himself is a bit of a rebel, and a graffiti artist. Seems like he considers himself quite the outsider when it comes to the rest of his people. Clearly doesn't have much going for him, and his brother Reggie is there to provide some guidance. Reggie has really good intentions, and Delson definitely loves his brother, but for me, the love that they have was never as convincing as I think Sucker Punch wanted it to be. Delson doesn't know it, but very early in the game, he realizes that he's a conduit that can absorb the powers of other conduits.
Of your, new symptoms?
Right? And of course, the only downside being that, nope, can't think of anything. This is pretty freaking awesome.
Really?
This happens in the first 10 minutes of the game, but you later find out everything in this event isn't exactly what it seems. The game's antagonist, Brooke Augustine, if we can call her that based on how this story plays out, tells Delson that he'll tell her exactly what he was told by other conduits, or of course, there will be consequences. I couldn't resist. I obviously chose what was more or less the dickhead option, and Augustine hurt the tribe with their concrete powers. The whole game, the writing, the story, everything, centers around the idea of if I can steal this power, maybe I can steal Augustine's powers or any other power for that matter. If Delson and his brother can work together on this, they can grab Augustine's powers and cure the damage done to their tribe. Things are never quite that simple, though, in this story, and there is quite a bit more to Brooke Augustine than Sucker Punch initially gives you, and that part of it I did like. When you get, toward the end of the game, things open up a little bit more, and you're like, I don't know, maybe I somewhat agree with this person. Outside of these few little things, there just isn't much story to speak of in the first place, and again, in my reviews, I don't want to spoil too much as it is. There are just no can't-miss personalities in this game, and I think I'm with the majority of Infamous fans on this one. I prefer Cole in just about every way. I just felt the story and most of the characters are much weaker than the first game in that respect, even if things like the voice acting are superior. For me, actually, Reggie was more likable, and you spend a lot less time with him, so we'll never know what would have been possible had this game played out a little bit differently. Still, I enjoyed this game for the most part, and I'll give credit where it's due. Augustine is a very convincing antagonist with her own surprising reasons helping the DUP, and to be honest, again, I agreed with some of what she had to say. I was also really glad, and it put a big smile on my face, that they brought back some of the comic animations to explain previous events in this game. It's not lazy, it's creative. Infamous Second Son is a damn good game. I don't think it's a great one. I think it's far from being great, but it still looks awesome for its age, has a very fun gameplay loop, although I'm sure some find it too repetitive for their taste. There are some awesome powers and other ideas here that I think, if given more time, Sucker Punch would have fleshed out and possibly made a masterpiece of an Infamous title. Some of the story and the writing didn't hit as well as probably intended in some ways, but it did feel a little bit rushed to me. With this one, it's probably the lowest I've ever given a Sony title yet on this channel, but I think Infamous Second Son, I can't really give it any higher than like a 7 or a 7.5, and even that is being a little bit generous. Maybe if I would have played it right when it came out and, you know, just been completely blown away by the visuals on the PlayStation 4 or something at the time, being that prisoner of the moment type, maybe I would have given this an 8 or a 9 out of 10, but I can't. In good conscience, you know, just being honest with you guys, I don't really feel like this title is better than a 7 or a 7.5, but it is a good game. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it more than you guys know. Don't forget to like and share this video as well as my other reviews. It really helps me out a lot. You guys take care. Thanks again. Have a good one. Peace.
Sorry, Baldy.